And this is our team, and we're all here. So I'm Angela DeLippy.
I'm Cameron Monahan. I'm the student director of Jackets Engaged.
I'm Olivia. I'm the newest member.
Hi, I'm Leah. So this is the social change wheel, and we just wanted to present this first because obviously we're talking about all of the different ways that we can enact change, and we're starting that with voting. And as you can see, voting is just a very small part of it, and there's a numerous amounts of ways that we can do it, and we just want to really focus on the different ways that you can enact social change throughout this presentation. So there's advocacy, there's philanthropy, there's community organizing, and all of these things we really want to stress that are important in conjunction of voting to enact social change.
All right, so a lot of people wonder, like, what's the point of voting or why should they vote? And it's important to address that question because it's valid. And in order to like be motivated to go through these processes of like registering, requesting absentee ballots, showing up to vote, you really need to know like why you're doing it and not just kind of do it absentmindedly. So voting is important because it's one of the most direct ways to make your voice and your beliefs heard. If we're working within this like electoral system that we have, voting for a candidate who shares your ideology, your passions for any particular issues that you care about, it's really like the surefire way to guarantee that those things are represented in government. Despite this, we will see that like not a lot of people vote in presidential elections, which are the most highly you have the highest voter turnout. Even then, like 40% of the country just doesn't show up. So clearly there's some disconnect between, clearly there's some answers to this question: why is voting important? That people don't really like see why their vote is important, and they don't really go out there. And then there are other barriers to why people don't vote as well. And you'll notice that there are like pretty bad disparities across like education level, age, income, and race that really negatively impact representation in government. It results in certain groups, higher educated, higher income, older people being overrepresented, and their beliefs and the things that they care about being overrepresented. And then younger people, poorer people, people of color being underrepresented in those systems. So we've particularly, we want to focus on younger people because younger people don't show up as much as older people do. And we've made some progress on campus from 2014 to 2018. So comparing the midterm elections, which are the less attended of the elections, voter participation on BW's campus has increased about 24.1%. So now we're at a point where like 41% of students on campus voted in the 2018 election. And we're expecting that number to be higher because it's a presidential election, of course, this year. And because of some of the stuff that we've done, we hope that pays off. But there's definitely still room for improvement, and there are still things that we are doing to try to improve those figures. And Angela's going to talk about some of those.
Yeah, so some of the campus efforts that we're working on right now. First, we've got the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge. And the All-In Challenge is forming a coalition of students, faculty, and staff that is promoting voter engagement among students. And the main three goals for this year have been to increase voter turnout on campus to 60%. And looking back at a presidential election in 2016, here at BW, the turnout was only 56.9, which was not too bad, and it lines up with the national data. We would like to increase it to 60 this year. The second goal we have is increase voter registration and turnout for students who turn out at lower rates. And as Cameron mentioned, that tends to be like younger students and usually freshmen, and so they're getting more info about how to vote and how to register and all that. And then the third goal is just to provide resources to ensure students develop election information literacy. And then the second program that is also offered at campus is the OAC Votes, which is run through the Ohio Athletic Conference, and they are promoting voter engagement among student athletes.
Yeah, so like Angela said, one of the things that we like to do is inform people of resources and how to use resources. And one of our favorite resources is vote.org. It's super, super easy to use, and you can really do a lot on it in a really short amount of time. Here's a screenshot of what the main page looks like if you go to vote.org. And what you'll do is you'll put in your address, the address that you think you're registered at, and it'll just tell you if you're registered or not, which is like the first easiest thing to do. And it's really, really important to do this, even if you are confident that you are registered to vote, because there have been instances in the past where like people have just been kicked off of voter rolls for no apparent reason. Or, you know, maybe the address that you thought you were registered at is not the address that you were actually registered at, and it just completely slipped your mind. Or maybe you changed and you just, you know, you don't know. So you really don't want to show up to vote and then be told, actually, that's, you're not registered, or that's this, you're not registered for here. Because that's a huge pain, and you just like don't want to deal with that. So it's best to check, even if you are 95% sure that you are registered. If you are not registered, you can use vote.org to register. Again, you just put in the address that you want to register at, and it'll take you to a page that explains how you would do it online or by paper, in person. And it's super, super quick and easy. That process depends on the state that you live in. In Ohio, you can register online, and the whole process takes like 5 minutes. You can also use this website to request an absentee ballot. It's kind of the same process as registering you to vote. It'll show you how in your area to request an absentee ballot, and like it'll give you important dates on sending it back. It's super, super helpful. We'll get more into absentee ballots later, but they're incredibly important, especially right now because of all this COVID stuff going on. A lot of people don't want to show up to voting locations in person and wait in these long lines with a bunch of other people. So absentee ballots are going to be incredibly important this election. And this will tell you all about how to do that. And then the final thing is, if you really like getting text messages like all the time, you can sign up for election reminders, and you will never ever miss any date, because they will just text you and remind you. Like they'll give you like a week in advance warning, and then like a couple days in advance warning, and you'll be completely aware of what's going on, which is nice.
Sorry about that. Okay. So this is, we want to stress absentee voting just because we are college students, and it's one of the best ways for us to vote, considering some of us maybe don't live that close to home. So maybe we're 2 hours away, 3 hours away from home. We're probably not going to drive all the way back on November 3rd to go to the polls. So absentee voting is voting by mail. And I just want to say that you do have to be registered to vote before you request an absentee ballot. So just go to vote.org and get registered, and then you can do an absentee ballot, which is you get the ballot in your mailbox. So there's 2 ways to sign up. You can go to vote.org/absentee ballot, or you can go to your county's Board of Elections website. So say you live in Lorain County, just type in, Lorain County Board of Elections on Google, and then their website should have a printable PDF. You can fill out the application, and then you put your voter registration address. So that would be like your home address where you registered to vote. And then you want to put your mailing address, which is the address that you want the absentee ballot to be mailed to. So that would be, BW's, like the dorm that you currently live in. And then you just send it to your county's Board of Elections through the mail. Just put it in the mail. And then in a few weeks, you'll get the ballot in the mailbox. And it's a really safe, it is a legitimate form of voting. And just as college students, it's a really great way to get out there and vote when, it's not as accessible for us to go back home. And then this is another great voter education website. It's ohiossecretaryofstate.gov/elections. This is just a little snippet of what the website looks like in all of the election data that you can get and all the election information. If you don't live in Ohio, that's okay. Other states have Secretary of State websites. It'll look similar to this, but it'll have, the election calendar. It'll have information on the candidates within your state. It'll have specific things like campaign finance if you want to get nitty gritty and down into what each campaign does. And then there's also really great information on the precincts. So if you do plan on vote in person.
Okay, and then back to another resource. This one is a collaborative effort between the Ohio Students Association and civic engine, and it functions a lot like vote.org in that, again, you just put in your address. You can do all the same things that you could do on vote.org. But this one has some other features that are really, really nice. You can see a sample ballot for your area. So if you want to vote in person, you can read up on like all of the races. You can do your research. You can, read the wording of like initiatives or, stuff like that. So you know what you're going to be like encountering when you show up to the voting booth, and you don't like freak out and you're like, oh, what does this even mean? Which is a terrible feeling. And another thing that they do is all of the levels of races, so like national, local, state, they will have nonpartisan candidate breakdowns. So it'll talk about like, each individual candidate from like your local judge to your senator and what their stances are on a list of issues. And those things come directly from the campaign. So they reach out to the campaign, they ask them to get a statement on it, and then they put it on this database. And it's super, super useful. This is a great resource for education. So I definitely recommend using it. And then these next two, Judge for Yourself and Ballotpedia, they do a lot of the same things that I was just talking about OSA doing. This is not so much for checking like your registration. This is for learning more about candidates and the ballots that you will be seeing. So like Ballotpedia has sample ballots that you can look at, and Judge for Yourself, you can go on there and read about the candidates much in the same way that OSA does. And one thing that I really like about Ballotpedia that I haven't seen on a lot of other websites is that if there's a wordy, like jargony initiative that you have to vote on, or like a referendum, it'll break down what it's saying into like real people words, and it'll tell you what a yes vote would do and what that means, and then what a no vote would do and what that means. So you actually are aware of what you're voting for. And again, it's not just like you're like taking a shot in the dark. And if you pair one of these websites with an absentee ballot, it's really, really nice because you can just pull up one of these websites, sit there with your absentee ballot in front of you, and just go candidate by candidate, learning about them, all this stuff. And you won't feel any of that pressure that you might in like an actual polling place. So it's a great thing to do. I definitely recommend it.
So now that we talked all about how you can register to vote and get your absentee ballot, I think it's also important to show when you can do all these things, which is going to be Tuesday, November 3rd. If you plan on voting in person, it's important you have this on the calendar. You know exactly when the day is. You can even have reminders set up so you don't miss election day. And as I mentioned, Election Day, November 3rd, is quite an important day, but I think it's also important to know when the other deadlines are. So today is September 22nd, which is National Voter Registration Day. And the rest of the days are going to be about Ohio specifically. So the deadline to register in Ohio is going to be October 5th. The deadline to request an absentee ballot is going to be October 31st. We have National Voter Early Day. For early day is October 24th. And then last day to postmark an absentee ballot is November 2nd. And while these dates are really quite important to remember, I think it's also, we highly recommend that you do this sooner rather than later. As we know with COVID, there's going to be a lot of people that will be voting by mail or requesting absentee ballots. So the faster that you can get this done, the easier it's going to be for you, and you won't have to wait as long necessarily for something to come in the mail. And you can just, the moment you get your absentee ballot, you can send it in rather than having to wait to the last day, which is November 2nd, to postmark it. And then again, November 3rd, general election, please vote. Thank you.
So moving away from voting, really to the core of this presentation, is what you can do other than that. And that really lies in what active citizenship is. So as you can see on the screen, there's all of these movements. So Black Lives Matter, there's LGBTQ rights, there's women's reproductive rights. All of these movements really have core aspects of active citizenship. So, you know, it's activism. It is becoming educated on the topics that you find interesting or that you're passionate about, and telling others about them to get them involved. It is political advocacy. It is informed participation. It's community engagement. It's organizing with people that you find a common ground on, that you find common issues about. And we really want to stress that becoming an active citizen is a process, and we're all somewhere along the process of it. And we just want to help you, get more steps in there, or just maybe move you along through the process, because it's definitely important. And all of these movements that you've heard about, or that you know about or read about on the news, they just start with people just like you. And we just want to help everyone become aware of what your role is as an active citizen.
Yeah. So like Leah said, and I will probably over explain with this slide, voting is a small but very, very important step. So like us talking about how you need to do more than voting isn't downplaying the importance of voting. It's just that like voting is only one small part of how to create change. And a lot of historically, a lot of these struggles for justice and social progress, civil rights, all this stuff didn't happen only in the voting booth. It happened out in the streets, and it stemmed from grassroots community movements and organizations. Like Leah said, just people who saw an issue, they talked to their friends, they talked to their neighbors, they talked to complete strangers, and they rallied them around this issue, and they demanded change in every aspect of their life, not just like once every year, once every 2 years, once every 4 years, showing up and voting. And I think that this makes sense, because when I say a lot of change doesn't come from the top down, a lot of people, they get in these positions of power, these established, like really high up positions of power, and they kind of want to stay there, and they don't want to overhaul or radically alter a system that got them into those positions. It's not really in their benefit to like look out for technically everybody, because like they're comfortable and they've prospered within that system. So this is why they need a lot of pressure from the outside and from the bottom. So in that way, to take those next steps into becoming an active citizen, it's necessary for you to learn how to organize members of your community, just like all these people in the past have, to make progress. And that is a big step beyond voting, entering into the realm of active citizenship and bringing about change and action.
So going off of that, voting is a necessary but insufficient act. So there are just problems in society that voting alone won't solve. Police brutality, eviction, there's homelessness, unemployment, things of that nature. And, voting alone won't bring about the changes that we need in society. And it wouldn't have prevented the acts that created unrest and rebellion within America. I mean, we all know this past year, police brutality has been a big issue, highlighted systemic racism in healthcare, systemic racism with food insecurity and homelessness. So we just want to say that, what's next? What is there to do other than vote, since we're all going to vote?
All right, so some more specific ways to create change that are beyond voting are organizing and attending protests. We all have voices in some form or another, so we should use them. And if you want change, you need to make change. Community aid and volunteering. We have Circle K International right here on campus every Wednesday at 5 in the Corey room. Door-to-door canvassing. We can't do that right now safely, but hopefully post-pandemic. Advocacy. Supporting a cause you find important. You can donate to the cause or promote it on social media. Grassroots organizing, mutual aid organizations, boycotts. Another way to vote is with your money. Buy from companies that align with your values whenever possible. Contacting your representatives and your state senators. They work for us. We do not work for them. And starting a dialogue. If you hear something from someone in your family or someone in your friend group that doesn't sit right with you, speak out about it. Healthy debate is crucial to an active citizenry, and you might just change someone's mind. And something that is not up here that I just wanted to mention is staying informed is really important. Stay informed on current events, so you're better prepared to take action on issues that you care about. And so when you do speak out, you are leading with logic and with reason.
So we wanted to highlight some local organizations here in Northeast Ohio. And these three that we're going to mention are specifically focused on voter engagement. So the first one we have is the Northeast Ohio Voter Advocates. The program focuses on enabling and expanding voter registration and turnout in underrepresented areas of Northeast Ohio. We also have the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland, and they serve voters in Cuyahoga County by providing nonpartisan info about candidates, issues, how to vote, as well as expanding people's access to government and elections and teaching them about local elections and state election and national elections. And lastly, we have Cleveland Votes. They are nonpartisan initiatives that teach us how to properly register voters, and also they have pop-up voter registration events all over Cleveland. And if you would like to get involved with any of these organizations, you can go on their websites and you can get involved that way. So yeah, they're great.
So these are some local organizations for social advocacy, and in no way they're all encompassing, but we just want to say that some are partisan, but we still wanted to include them on here just because we figured it's great information for everyone to know about the local organizations in Cleveland, Northeast Ohio. So if any of them do pique your interest, go ahead and check out their websites. So we have the American Civil Liberties Union of Ohio, an organization that through education, litigation, and lobbying seeks to preserve civil liberties. We have the Ohio Student Association. It's led by young people in Ohio with a focus on racial, social, economic, and educational justice. We have the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. So it's a coalition of community organizations, faith-based institutions, labor unions that focus on statewide advocacy through nonpartisan electoral programming and leadership training. And then we also have the Democratic Socialists of America, the Cleveland chapter. It's an organization that builds, progressive social change through labor and community organizing. And during this pandemic, they also did a lot with tenant organizing. So Cameron, if you want to mention the specific things that you heard.
Yeah, we wanted to include a tenants' rights group, but there aren't really many of them in Cleveland. There used to be one, but it went out in like 2017. So the only group that I could think of that was doing something like that was DSA. And they've been doing like door-to-door canvases. In Cleveland, the eviction rolls are all public. So you can compile a list of when people are set to be evicted and just go knock on their doors and like make sure that they are aware that there is legal aid available to them, and that make sure that they're just like aware of their eviction. Sometimes people have no idea that they're going to be evicted. So that's why we included them on there. Not like, I don't know, it's not like, oh, DSA, but that is one specific thing that they are really, really good at in Cleveland that I think that if you're interested in tenant organizing, that you should look into.
So this is just some other issue-specific organizations locally. So if environmental issues you're really passionate about, there's Bike Cleveland, the Northeast Ohio Sierra Club, and the Sunrise Movement Cleveland. Bike Cleveland is actually great. It's a local initiative to try and get more bike safety roads. So it might sound kind of silly, but actually a lot of people rely on bikes for transportation. And definitely the road system in Cleveland isn't the most bike friendly. And they're just trying to ensure that there is a space for people that need to ride bikes, because to or from work, you think, if it's dangerous to go to and from work, that's not a good thing. So they're just trying to do local initiative to get that going. And we also have LGBTQ+ issues. So we have the Community Center in Cleveland, the Stonewall Sports, and Cleveland Pride.
Right. And if you're looking for organizations that deal more with poverty and injustice, we have the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, Greater Cleveland Food Bank, and Cleveland Jobs with Justice. And if you're passionate about criminal justice reform, there's Alliance for Safety and Justice and the Ohio Justice and Policy Center. And if you want to look back at this presentation is being recorded, or you're welcome to take a picture.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we don't know all of the organizations in Cleveland, and especially not everywhere. And we haven't even hit on all of the issues that are pretty popular and people care about these days. So if you are looking for more organizations that address problems that you care about, here are some resources that you can use to find them, learn more about them, and hopefully get in contact with them and learn how you can become involved with them. The first one is bw Give Pulse, which is a fantastic resource if you're looking to learn about organizations that are directly like related to BW or in the surrounding community. And then another thing is the BW Brain Center, which we're a part of, and like this is being hosted by. If you have an issue that you care about and you want to learn more about other organizations that may be focusing on that issue, I highly recommend going to the Brain Center and like starting a conversation with Julie or Christy, because they know a lot more than we do and they know like everything. So you'll be able to find out where those organizations are, and like they probably have connections with them, so they can get you in contact with them, and it's great. Volunteer match. This is if you want to just like find volunteer opportunities. You put in your address or your city, state, and it'll show you organizations that need volunteers around you, and explain like what the organizations are about. Don't be afraid of using organizations' websites. So like just doing this broad search of criminal justice reform organizations in Cleveland and then clicking around the results, kind of going through their website, you can find what they believe in, like what their organizing structure or strategy is, who to contact if you're interested in learning more or becoming a member or a part of their organization. And then if you're looking for something a little more formal, like an internship or a job with a organization that cares about social justice and like community organizing or anything like that, I would recommend using Idealist. Idealist, that's like, it's not so great for like volunteer opportunity, but if you are really looking to have a career in this kind of work, Idealist is fantastic. And again, they just have listings by like location and everything. So it's a great resource.
All right, and now we have some discussion questions. We're just going to go through them. And if you have a response, you can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Yeah, but please, it'd be fun to talk to everyone. So if you want to participate, go ahead.
How have you participated in active citizenship? We could always move on. Oh,
I'm from Seattle.
Hi.
I am a freshman here at BW, and I've done a lot of like climate justice things, planning events, going to protests in Seattle, and I just came to this presentation because I was interested in learning how I can start doing some of that stuff here. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Also, I have a question about voting in Ohio, if I can switch my so I can vote here instead of in Washington, if you guys know anything about that. Yeah.
Thank you so much and welcome. We'd love to talk to you about getting involved with climate justice work here. Yes, you may absolutely switch your voter registration. What you will need to do is, you'll use your campus address. You need to register with the actual building address, so not the general BW mailing address. And that's available on the website. I'll type in how you can look that up.
Okay, cool.
But you just need to register here in Cuyahoga County using that address, and then the board contacts where you were registered and lets them know that you are no longer voting there. So that's the way to do that.
Yeah.
Some folks have run into online voter registration issues switching states if you haven't like changed your license to Ohio. So I would recommend using a paper form. And
Yeah,
we have
I tried
those,
to do it online, and
yeah, we have those on the in the lower level of the union at the Civic corner.
okay.
There you can fill it out, and Brain Center is just on the 3rd floor of the union. So if you have any questions, you can pop up and ask.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I also just did switch my voter registration address, similar to I think what you're trying to do. So honestly, all I did was look up Ohio voter registration, and the form is the same form as if you're just registering to vote anyway, but you just hit changing address, so changing voter address, and you just print it out, and it's pretty easy. So
Okay.
good question.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then we wanted to ask, do you have any organizations that you recommend to other students that we have not talked about?
I have a clarification question.
All right.
Would it be
What?
outside of
I'm hearing a response.
I can't really hear.
I'll type it in the chat.
Julie, can you try putting it in the chat for us, please?
Mainly outside of BW's campus, but you can hear about ones that are within.
Yeah,
Yeah,
either's fine.
both work.
Either's fine. Yes, there are
Yeah.
student Democrats and student Republicans, and there's also libertarians as well.
All right. And then how can you encourage others to become an active citizen? All right. And if someone has a response to that, you can just put it in the chat later on. How has someone else's acts of active citizenship impacted you in your life?
Yeah, like this one, if you've ever been on the receiving end of some kind of like community organizing where you're from, like there's examples of stuff like in my hometown where people have organized around specific issues, and then like you get to see the final results of that. Like maybe it results in some sort of change in your community. Like sometimes it's the lamest stuff, but it's cool to see it happen, and it's cool to like benefit from it. So that's the kind of question that I think we're going for there, if you have an example of that.
And yes, Julie, I was just about to mention RBG. We as women we legally can't be discriminated in the workplace because of her. All right, and kind of going back to one of the previous questions, are there any issues on campus that you would want addressed through organizing that aren't existing right now?
I have been thinking a lot because of COVID, we have to take out our food, there's just so much trash, and I'm interested in like, I don't know, finding a way to like help students understand what you can recycle and what you can throw away more, or like pressuring the school to use more, like less plastic, more eco-friendly containers or something like that. I want to do something around that, so I don't know.
Do you know if we have a climate advocacy group here on campus yet?
I do not. Do we? I don't think we do. No.
Well, maybe that's something that we should get started.
Yeah. I would recommend like Sunrise. They have community chapters and like college chapters and high school chapters, and it's super, super easy to get one started. My little sister started one at her high school, and like all it is like a training with Sunrise, and then you get this really cool like firsthand organizing experience because you get to build the structure and basically like decide, like you just said, individual problems that you will take on and try to change. And it's really nice to like start something from nothing and then like kind of see what it becomes and what kind of changes you can make. So I would definitely recommend looking into Sunrise. They like their primary thing is colleges and high schools and like young people organizing. So that it's all around environmental justice. So I would recommend that.
And there is a campus sustainability committee, or at least there used to be. So we can help you find ways to tap into that. I know that prior to COVID, there had been a lot of attention paid to using different materials and in that were more eco-friendly, as well as using reusable containers and things like that. So so there are some things underway. And thank you, Ellen shared Students for Environmental Awareness, asking if that's still an active group on campus. I'm actually not certain of that one, but I can check on that.
All right, and with all of that being said, a great first step is to take the pledge at bit.ly/jacketsallin to vote not only in this upcoming election in November, but in all future elections. It takes a minute at the most, and it's just a nice way to make that commitment to yourself towards becoming an active citizen.
And then another thing that we're doing this time around, especially with COVID, the state of Ohio has asked multiple organizations to advocate for poll workers. So we're in desperate need of them, especially if people are going to go and vote in person. So if you would like to participate in that, just go to vote.ohio.gov/defenddemocracy. And then just some self-promotion here at the end. If you'd like to follow us, our Instagram is bw.jackets.engage. And most of the stuff that we put on there is going to be about voter registration, how to get involved being a poll worker, voter deadlines, and just promoting political participation and voter engagement all over campus. So give us a follow. And then any additional questions?
Questions or comments are welcome also. All right, well, I want to say, oh, I see something in the chat. Thank you, Christy. I would agree. I'm grateful to our Jackets Engaged team for the time and energy that you put into this presentation today, as well as the work that you've been doing for the past year and will continue to do beyond presidential election years. Thanks to all for attending, and just curious if any of our Jackets Engaged leaders want to share one final thought before we log off.
If this was incredibly exciting for you and you were like, I want to be like Cameron, Angela, Leah, or Olivia, and we inspired you, you should join Jackets Engaged. I think we're still accepting members, right? We've got an application up and on Give Polls, and we're so
I'll put the
we're
application
so
links on the
cool.
chat.
Like you would love to be a member of our group.
I second that. Come join. We're fun.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions or comments, again, thank you for participating. We'd love to have you join us for future BW Civic Leads presentations, and look for more events to come. We're looking at doing some debate watch party and some other exciting things throughout the course of this semester. Jackets Engaged, if you can hang on for a minute.
Wait, how do I find the address to, you said you're going to put a link in for how to find my address?
So sorry, let me make sure. It'll just take me a minute to make sure I'm giving you the right link.
Good job, guys.
Agreed. All right, there's the link in the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And how is your name pronounced?
Rua.
Rua?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you for talking.
Thank you. Yes.
And also, I looked it up, and it looks like the Students for Environmental Awareness thing hasn't really posted or like been active since 2017. So I think that they might have.
Maybe I need to get on this.
Yeah, I think they might have been. I think they were a rip. I don't know, but
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
no problem.
But we believe in you, and you can start anything you want to. So
And you can call it whatever you want too. Like you just
Yeah.
gotta
Yeah.
create. That's the beauty.
Thanks.
Julie, it's a good thing you didn't decide to host from here because they're cleaning the carpets in our office. It's super
Oh my
loud right now.
Oh, I'm going to stop the recording.